The Weeknd has been teasing the release of his final album under that stage name for over 2 years at this point. Shortly after the release of 2022's Dawn FM, The Weeknd posted to Twitter to pose the question to his fans, "Did you know you're experiencing a new trilogy?" This confirmed that Dawn FM and 2020's After Hours were 2/3 of a greater narrative and concept for The Weeknd. Only a few weeks ago, at the time of recording this video, he gave us the cover art and title of this supposed final chapter, Hurry Up Tomorrow. On top of this revelation, in 2023, in an interview with W Magazine, he spoke of his upcoming album in the following terms. "The album I'm working on now is probably my last hurrah as The Weeknd. This is something I have to do. As The Weeknd, I've said everything I can say." Thus, we have 2 trilogies bookending The Weeknd's entire musical career, or at least this iteration of himself. In 2011, he released 3 acclaimed mixtapes in the shape of House of Balloons, Thursday, and Echoes of Silence, widely regarded as some of the best of the era and helping to usher in a whole new generation of alternative R&B. A trilogy of tapes shrouded in mystery at the time, detailing The Weeknd's hedonistic parties, heartbreak and love with a distinctly dark edge. The Weeknd of 2024 is very different to the one of 2011. Over the last 10 or so years, he's blossomed into one of the biggest pop stars on the planet and has spent the last half decade or so leaning strongly into a more vintage, retro synth pop heavy sound. But that dark edge has always remained. If you think about the subject matter of some of his biggest hits, it kind of stands as an anomaly amongst his pop peers. Can't Feel My Face is literally a song about substance abuse. The Hills is about a toxic relationship and also substance abuse. And even Blinding Lights, literally one of the biggest songs of all time, currently standing as the most streamed Spotify song ever, retains this dark edge. Although sonically it's glitzy and luxurious, kind of like the Las Vegas setting of its music video, the lyrics revolve around the overwhelming allure of all the vices you can imagine. So it makes sense that the overarching themes of what this yet to be completed trilogy seems to be is death, desire, and rebirth. In order to understand or try to predict how this chapter of his career will wrap up, we of course have to take it back to the start of this new trilogy and work through what he is actually trying to communicate. "Take off my disguise, I'm living someone else's life" is the very opening lyric to After Hours on track 1, Alone Again. On initial listen, the song appears to be setting up an album revolving around a pretty bad breakup, which it does, there's no denying that. But with the benefit of hindsight, it's a pretty clear way to foreshadow the thesis of this entire new trilogy, the end of The Weeknd as a character. This isn't the first taste of this album and character we received, however, and The Weeknd intentionally chose the one song with the most hedonistic, over-the-top lyrics as the preview to After Hours, Heartless. An extreme, almost self-satire song with The Weeknd indulging in all the things we used to associate with him in the early days of his career. Toxic relationships and substance abuses. Overtly indulging in his fame and money, but exaggerated beyond belief. So much pussy be falling out the pocket. Is fucking hilarious, but of course not something a serious person would say. He paints himself as a tragic character, one who is fundamentally too addicted to the fast life to change his ways, remaining heartless. The second taste of the album we got was just a couple of days later with Blinding Lights, with a noticeably similar outfit and aesthetic to the previous single and its artwork. Blinding Lights, as previously mentioned, is about temptation and The Weeknd succumbing to the metaphorical lights. The fame, the wealth, the money, the whole song serves as an allegory for an overdose. And the lyric serves 2 purposes. It clearly serves as a continuation of the breakup that was set up at the outset of the album, but also functions to comment on his relationship with temptation itself, rapidly descending into a downward spiral. And you can track this descent through some pretty clear and defined mini sections of After Hours. Too Late has The Weeknd's voice oddly contorting and changing in pitch, as if he's battling with his own alter ego. The references to death and being too far gone are also ever present. He speaks of his soul being too far gone, which has major implications for the end of this album into the next one, as well as bringing back the theme of self-aware destructive behavior from Heartless. Hardest to Love and Scared to Live are the precursors to his self-imposed exile into the cold, lonely streets of Las Vegas. Hardest to Love, as the title would suggest, details some of his shortcomings as a partner and a person, once again painting himself as a lost cause, but sowing the seeds of some pretty manipulative behavior. Describing yourself as this awful person, but telling this other person that I Can't Believe You Want Me and Together We're So Alone is the internal conflict here. Being self-aware that you're a negative presence in this person's life, but still being tempted to repeat the mistakes of the past is that struggle. Scared to Live functions similarly, although he appears to accept the outcome of this fated relationship, hinting towards moving on. And at this point, I must mention the aesthetic and sonic composition of the album. The Weeknd, in all public appearances during this era, maintains a consistent creative direction, particularly with that striking red suit. The sound of the album is distinctly retro, 80s and dreamlike, fitting for a project so concerned with regret and mistakes of the past. The Weeknd even used the music videos attached to the album to track this non-linear story. Snow Child has The Weeknd reminiscing on how and why he became an artist in the first place, describing an idyllic version of LA, whilst detailing this character's obsession with money and sex before proclaiming that he must leave. The attached animated music video literally has him walking through his past lives before ending up at the familiar lights of Las Vegas. The shimmer of LA dulls on Escape to LA as the reality of being alone sets him as he exiles himself. And that's where we get to Heartless, the song where he overtly overcompensates for his heartbreak by indulging in all the excess imaginable. You can see that unwillingness to actually deal with his emotions in the lyrical connections between some of the songs. On Snow Child, he raps, "She never need a man, she what a man need," only to do a massive 180 on Heartless by singing, "Never need a bitch, I'm what a bitch need." Faith is where he loses all control and dives right back into the world of drugs to cope with the turmoil. One of the standout tracks of After Hours, in my opinion. It's dark, synth heavy and super brooding. The Weeknd actually described this as one of the most autobiographical songs on the album, being inspired by a real trip to Las Vegas around 10 years ago, where he was arrested during a quote-unquote rock star era he wasn't proud of. On the face of it, a song about addiction and substances, but that has wider allegorical significance when the totality of the trilogy is considered. It's the physical embodiment of temptation, a version of sin even. Which is why a lot of people consider After Hours to be a version of hell for this trilogy, aware of suffering and addiction but with seemingly no escape, destined to repeat the mistakes of the past. Faith ends with The Weeknd in the back of a flashing car as the lights of Vegas shine bright on him, and that's where we get to Blinding Lights. As previously discussed, details the withdrawal symptoms from the previous songs and describes a euphoric overdose. I Can't Sleep Until I Feel Your Touch is, to me, explicitly a lyric about addiction, similarly to I Can't Feel My Face When I'm With You, But I Love It. A running theme of The Weeknd's music has been comparing the relationship with love and sex as a drug, and it's no more apparent than here. On In Your Eyes, he literally describes the aftermath of being blinded by the lights, repeating the phrase, I'm blind, almost as if his death or near-death experience has made him reach an epiphany, openly admitting to being ashamed of what he's done in the past as well. To me, this feels like a dying words song, looking directly in the eyes of the person he's wronged so much, only being able to see that pain in their eyes when it's too late, when he's at the point of death. Save Your Tears has taken on a whole new meaning for me over the last couple of years. Initially, we hear it as definitive proof that this breakup has been finalized. You look so happy when I'm not with you, as if he regrettably, almost creepily, is watching over his previous partner. But in the grander existential tale of fame and death he appears to be telling, this feels like some sort of strange ghost story. Save Your Tears to me details a haunting. You saw me, caught you by surprise, a single teardrop falling from your eye is like a brief, unexpected moment of guilt. Even you walked past me like I wasn't there sounds like an overt reference to being a ghost-like figure. The music video for Save Your Tears provides even more of an insight. The battered and bruised version of him from the cover art and previous videos is no more, replaced by a version of himself with excessive plastic surgery, as if the original version of himself is now dead, replaced by only the performative glitz and glamour of his character. It's another song that serves a dual function. On the face of it, he's describing a pretty rough breakup, but conceptually, it speaks to his relationship with death, fame, and the character of The Weeknd. Repeat After Me seems to be this character seeding intrusive thoughts in this ex-partner, constantly repeating you don't love him, you don't love him. It's not clear as to whether she hears these words or not, however. It comes off as a desperate plea, one final attempt to go back to the start and repeat the cycle again. Only this time it might be impossible because he is now dead. After Hours, the title track, the longest song and most ambitious moment on the album, is where we seem to get the first concrete evidence that this character is actually about to die. Fighting for my life, I couldn't breathe again. Your body next to me is just a memory, I'm falling in too deep. That's the realization that death is coming, perhaps as a result of the overdose detailed on previous songs. I turned into the man I used to be is telling, considering this song stylistically is closer to some of the music of his original Trilogy tapes. The rest of the song details a litany of regret, including lies, manipulation, and heartbreak. It ends with him promising that he'll do better if he's returned to this earth. The final song on the album, Until I Bleed Out, is where death is confirmed. He describes being paralyzed, being scared, and not wanting to touch the sky. Existentially, a song about wanting a second chance at life and promising to kick certain habits and addictions if you're granted that wish. But to me, again, it's about the Weeknd's character itself. The Weeknd is a vessel where Abel is able to use that fame and money for anything he wants. Him saying, I don't need it, is to me him saying he's willing to let the character of the Weeknd die. But the tragedy is that the Weeknd is the one who ultimately gets to live, with the real Abel being the one who's bound by the laws of life and death. And that's where the album ends, directly leading into the Weeknd's next project, and my personal favourite of his, Dawn FM. In the run-up to Dawn FM, The Weeknd described it in the following terms. Picture the album being like the listener is dead, and they're stuck in this purgatory state, which I always imagine being stuck in traffic waiting to reach the light at the end of the tunnel. And while you're stuck in traffic, they got a radio station playing in the car, with a radio host guiding you to the light and helping you transition to the other side. So it could feel celebratory, could feel bleak, however you want to make it feel, but that's what the dawn is for me. In explicit terms, he describes it as a journey through purgatory and a guide to the quote-unquote light. It wasn't surprising then when fans started connecting the dots between After Hours and Dawn FM shortly before Abel confirmed this new trilogy. Sonically, Dawn FM leans even heavier into the synth-pop new wave sounds that peppered After Hours. Abel intentionally leaving it up to us to interpret its meaning directly plays into the entire purgatory concept. Not quite here, not quite there. It's an uncanny state of existence. To me, this choice reminds me of the Thursday track, Heaven or Las Vegas, an intentional contrast between the light and the hedonistic lifestyle he indulged in at the time. Dawn FM appears to take place in the immediate aftermath of After Hours, explicitly referencing the opening Alone Again intro track with the line, "This what I do alone." The breakup and or death has happened, and now we are entering a new state of being, with Jim Carrey of course acting as the host of this fictional radio station. We immediately find Abel in a state of unknowing, of questioning and attempted discovery, immediately setting up a cliffhanger for the album's ending and the final installment. We are none the wiser, but we have no choice but continue this journey into the light. Gasoline kicks off the narrative of the album at dawn at 5 AM as he indulges in past mistakes, desperate for affection and human touch, scrambling to feel alive. An explicitly nihilistic song, he states that the only thing he understands is zero sum of tenderness. This old man version of The Weeknd is the embodiment of regret, and we even see in the music video the younger version of Abel attacking him violently. The hedonistic version of himself intentionally choosing to ignore destructive behavior, even if the ultimate victim is his future self. Just wrap my body in these sheets and pour out the gasoline, it don't mean much to me, is an allusion to both accepting death, but also The Weeknd accepting the death of his character that he's lived in for 10/15 years. How Do I Make You Love Me, to me, feels like the inverse mirror of Hardest to Love. No longer finding excuses or rationalizing manipulative behavior, but accepting it as a tragic character trait. Instead of fixing it, he lives and revels in it. I only want what's right in front of me, telling himself that the only thing that really matters is the here and the now. But the human nature to question still lingers. How do I make you want me and make it last eternally? Is a direct question to him saying on Gasoline that he knows there's nothing after this. Release yourself to escape reality is a sort of way of attempting to drag this person down with him into an existence of pure pleasure. The approaching light and desire for this person is so strong that it still has him questioning if it can exist beyond that light. It transitions beautifully into Dawn FM's lead single, Take My Breath. Take My Breath seems to be a confirmation that he successfully convinced this person to go down this road. or Abel is hearing just exactly what he wants to hear from this person as a result of the purgatory he's living in. Baby says, "Take my breath away and make it last forever." At this point in time, he's living in the fantasy world he's created for himself. As he says, "It's like a dream what she feels with me." He also sets up the next song with the line, "You're offering yourself to me like sacrifice." Sacrifice is the song where he most explicitly accepts the toxic personality traits he has come to regret on this journey. He tells the story of coming from Toronto, where the winter nights never sleep. A particularly important line considering Abel has previously told the story about being temporarily homeless as a youngster. As an aside, Sacrifice is one of the funkiest, nastiest, and most danceable songs of The Weeknd's entire career. That's fitting when you consider the lyrical material details being disinhibited by accepting some of your worst traits. "The ice inside my veins will never bleed" is both a reference to him never being able to change those core characteristics, as well as being literally dead. No blood is currently flowing. He openly admits to lying, manipulation before saying that he sacrificed this person's love for more of the night. The night here is the sex, the drugs, and the fame. But the victim here isn't just Abel, it's this love interest too. On Take My Breath, he says, "Tell me you love me if I bring you to the light." Sacrifice is the admission of exploiting that admission of love. That's an exaggeration of The Weeknd's lyrics from the earlier part of his career. Just go and listen to a song like King of the Fall, for example. Ultimately, he accepts that he doesn't want to love, will continue to just manipulate and lie, because the intoxicating high of the fast life is just too tempting to give up. We then get an intermission provided by Quincy Jones, of course most famous for being Michael Jackson's closest production collaborator. Quincy tells the story of generational trauma and intense regret, detailing his destructive behavior, particularly with women, as vindictive and fearful, and how it bled into all other aspects of his life. It could also be the embodiment of the old man Abel we see on the cover art itself. Out of Time is where we see Abel take that advice from Quincy and link it back to previous trauma, rather than believing his toxic traits are ever present. Out of Time is one of the most tranquil moments on the album, and it feels like a moment of peace and freedom after realizing why you are the way you are. He details his regret again a bunch of times before tragically declaring that, "I'll care for you, but I'm out of time." Once again, a double meaning. Out of time in the sense that this relationship is past saving, but out of time because he's no longer of this world. The music video serves to hammer home this point, with a young again Abel experiencing what appears to be an idyllic memory of love and joy before the older version of himself snaps him back to reality. He awakes to find himself on an operating table where Jim Carrey reminds him that he is in fact out of time. There's no going back. This seems to take place immediately after his death at the end of After Hours, and I'd like to think this entire album is taking place in the fragmented life flashing before your eyes moments as he realizes he's dying. Jim Carrey says that you may even forget your own name, hinting towards Abel intentionally attempting to kill off the character of The Weeknd and losing that stage name entirely. Here We Go Again serves to remind himself of his cyclical failings with relationships, detailing all the glamour this life has afforded him, but still failed to break those cycles of regret and failure. This new love he seems to be enamored with will fall victim to the same fate as previous ones. It's for that reason that there is not a more fitting feature for this song than Tyler the Creator. Igor, which is one of Tyler's most acclaimed albums, details a cyclical tale of love, loss, regret, and failed relationships. So it makes sense that he's here to comment on this exact theme. Best Friends, a super underrated track in my opinion, has The Weeknd outlining to this new interest exactly what will happen in the future if they become involved. "I'll get clumsy and tear it apart." He warns them that we can't get too close, and tries to rationalize this by claiming they can maintain both a sexual and platonic relationship at the same time. He openly describes it as toxic love and fundamentally can't understand why this person is starting to catch feelings, even though he's there telling this person he loves them and they're sharing incredibly intimate moments. Is There Someone Else is a flip on this, showing an incredibly insecure and vulnerable version of The Weeknd. He claimed he wanted to be just friends with benefits, but now desperately tries to claim that he's the only person for her. He claims that he doesn't deserve someone loyal to him and starts projecting his own previous mistakes onto this person. He's worried that there is another man because that's the behavior he's displayed in previous relationships. This character claims he wants someone loyal, but is tragically continuing the toxic cycles of relationships with an incredibly paranoid perception of what trust is. Trust and loyalty isn't constantly badgering the other person. Trust would imply that you needn't ask the question of if there's someone else in the first place. Starry Eyes now details his seeming willingness to let go of his past behaviors for something more pure with a person who's been through trauma like he has. Let Me Love You Like You Need appears to confirm that he's getting over his fear of love and willing to take that risk. He accepts that this person may break him and kick him to the curb, but that's the leap you must take for love. That's the faith and the trust you put in it. Every Angel is Terrifying builds on that theme of vulnerability. It is terrifying to put your faith and trust into one person, but that's what makes it so rewarding. The advertisement section describes this new form of love as intense, graphic, sexy, and euphoric. This new love and the afterlife is his idea of bliss, of heaven, and now he feels he's within touching distance of it. The newfound love, as well as the idea of life after the light, has changed his earlier nihilistic approach to the world. Don't Break My Heart appears to be opening himself up to this new person. You snatched my soul, I'm so mesmerized, he says. But that residual trauma lingers. The paranoia of is there someone else returns with the line, don't break my heart, I don't know if I can take it anymore. As if he feels this is the very last time he could cope with that experience. I must break again here because as conceptually dense and fun this album is, the sound of it is ridiculous, and this song is another standout to me. Eerie, strange, synth-heavy 80s inspired track that only adds to the otherworldly soundscape. His paranoia that this person is hiding something is confirmed on the next track, I Heard You're Married. As you would imagine, the track details that this love interest is in fact married, and The Weeknd scolds himself for not noticing sooner. Instead of moving on straight away, he tries to convince this woman to leave her partner and questions why she's even with him if she's cheating on him. A fair question, of course, but he declares that he can't be with this person because they're too deceiving. For me, a clear reference also to the music industry and his own character, continuing to sow the seeds of separation between Abel and The Weeknd. I can't be with you, you're too deceiving. That's the music industry. It's not hard to notice the parallels between this person's behavior and his own behavior. The story would lead me to infer that he has been handed this deceitful person on a plate because he himself was that too. They are one and the same. It's some sort of cosmic deterministic karma for how he's treated people in the past. And that's where we find him on Less Than Zero, reduced back to the person he tried to convince himself he wasn't, cold and alone. Again. He once again begins to rationalize and tries to come to some sort of agreement with this person. Can we meet in the middle because you were just like me before? Is true. The deception this woman has shown was the exact same kind of behavior The Weeknd admitted to doing on countless occasions. He accepts it and questions whether they should just be together anyway because ultimately he doesn't want to be alone. He goes on to state that he'll always be less than zero. He tried to hide it, tried to fight it, but now he wants to be free. Instead of hiding it, he must embrace it before he reaches that light. Jim Carrey provides the closing poem on the album, Phantom Regret. Jim tells Abel, and us by proxy, to let go of regret. Dwelling in the ocean of regret is not progress, but will leave you fated to repeat those mistakes over and over again. He says, if pain's living on when your body's long gone, and your phantom regret hasn't let it go yet, you may have not died in the way that you must. Explicitly telling Abel that in order to move into the light, to transition into a new state of being beyond purgatory, you have to let go of regret. Heavens for those who let go of regret is to me the biggest indication of what the future holds for the upcoming album. And that's where we are now, eagerly anticipating the final installment of this trilogy and maybe of The Weeknd as a whole. As After Hours and Dawn FM constitute some sort of hell and purgatory, the theme or arena for the new album is speculated to be his idea of heaven. Fans have also run with the idea that this whole endeavour is The Weeknd's take on Dante's Divine Comedy, with the journey from hell through purgatory into heaven. The new album title and cover have now been released. The artwork has The Weeknd not in any fancy get-up or character or makeup, but rather bleakly stripped of all of his glamour. During the album title's announcement, we got a lengthy scroll of text detailing its themes. He says yesterday was 14 years ago, which spans his entire career. He looks in the mirror, unable to move as he hasn't yet faced himself. And that's what I believe this new album will be, an intentional dissection of The Weeknd as a character to reveal the person underneath. An attempt to let go of regret through pain and to find bliss. When today ends, I'll discover who I am. Hurry up tomorrow. The day in this context is The Weeknd's celebrity. When this album strips him of his own character, both him and us will discover what is underneath. It points to an album that might be his most vulnerable to date. Dancing in the Flames, the album's first single, has just released at the time of recording this video, and seems to revel in the idea of being okay with chaos and destruction. To me, this song describes the love that transcends life and death that he alludes to on Dawn FM, the one he didn't ultimately reach but still yearns for. Although I believe Hurry Up Tomorrow will be thematically about The Weeknd's idea of some sort of heaven, I don't think that means it will be an overtly bright or happy album. I think that heaven will be reached through facing up to trauma and shortcomings in a way we might have not heard before. I feel like this whole endeavor is like the mythos of a phoenix. His death will force him to regenerate and be reborn into a new version of himself. Exactly what this version will look like, we will have to wait until this new album actually comes out. All I can say is that I cannot fucking wait.